Once again, welcome to our webinar today on promoting wellness. Um, we all, of course, our goal is always to have a healthy environment for our children to be in. Not only our children, but we want our employees to be healthy and well so that y'all can come to work and we can all come to work and make a difference in the children's lives. But also parents, when they are coming into our programs, we want to make sure that they're healthy and they're well. As we go through the minimum standards and we go through best practices on promoting wellness in your program and maintaining a healthy environment, you kind of start seeing that there's a lot of regulation on the caregivers on hand washing and sanitizing, a lot of regulations with children and hand washing and sanitizing. The parents that are walking in and out of our program each day, twice a day, morning and afternoon, a lot of times they are the ones that are bringing in a lot of the illnesses, and they're touching doorknobs and signing in and, kind of all of those ways that we spread germs. So, we'll talk about this later on in the webinar, as we move forward, but make sure that you share a lot of health practices with your families and encourage them to, follow a lot of the same guidelines that we follow here at our early education program. Follow these same guidelines at home too, so that we can maintain a healthy environment for the children, both at school and at home. This really, really does make a difference whenever we can encourage parents to, sanitize and hand wash and follow all of these same techniques. We make the assumption that they're doing this, and sometimes, or a lot of times, they're not. Especially right now at the beginning of the school year, usually around the end of September, just depending on the season, I will send out my policy on maintaining a healthy environment and the steps that we take to maintain a healthy environment for our children. I will send that out to our parents and encourage them to do the same thing at home prior to cold and flu season. That way, when you do start having kids getting sick, it's always better to refer a parent back to a memo that they previously received rather than handing them a new document at that point. It just helps out a whole lot. All right, so a few objectives that we're going to cover in our webinar today. And y'all tell me to slow down if I am going too fast, but there's a lot of information to go over when we talk about promoting wellness in a very short 1-hour webinar. So of course we'll talk about sanitizing and disinfecting, and I want to talk about some of the new minimum standards that are around that particular topic, performing health checks, immunizations, hand washing, diaper changing and toileting, responding to illness, and then just an overview of health practices is what I've got on my agenda for today. If you have any other additional questions or comments, again, please take advantage of that chat section and ask away so that we can talk about it. Directors and owners and teachers all agree that maintaining a healthy environment is one of the biggest challenges that we have in our industry. And we talk about supervision and safety. I do this activity a lot of times in trainings where I ask teachers what prevents you from properly supervising children, and one of the very common answers I get is, well, when children get sick in the classroom and they throw up or whatever it may be, the teacher has to turn their attention to that ill child, which then creates opportunities for incidents and risk with the rest of the children. So illnesses, it's not only we want to keep them healthy, but it's a huge distraction too. So having all of these procedures in place is just so important right there. All right, so first off, let's talk about the child care minimum standards. And prior to April of 2017, when it talked about sanitizing and disinfecting under the under subchapter R, health practices, you know, it talked about the four-step process, and that you could use a bleach water solution, or you could use a alternate chemical that was approved by the EPA, that could be used in a hospital or clinic, that was safe to use around children. You could use that also, but you still had to follow the four-step process, which was wash it with soap and water, rinse it with clear water, soak it or spray it with a disinfectant solution for at least 2 minutes, and allow it to air dry. Well, now, after April of 2017, you're going to notice that under subchapter R, health practices, that's been completely removed from the standards. And what you have to refer to now is terms and definitions. And when you go back to the front of the minimum standards book and you look at terms and definitions on page 5 of the minimum standards, number 43 is now going to give a definition of sanitize. And basically it says the use of a product, usually a disinfecting solution, that is registered with the Environmental Protection Agency, which reduces germs, down to a level that is safe and healthy for the children. And it's going to go on, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but it's going to go on and say that if you are using an alternate chemical, you're going to follow the manufacturer's instructions on sanitizing. Okay, now that's very, very important right there. Whatever it is you're using to sanitize your program, to disinfect your program, it has to have instructions for sanitizing. If it doesn't have instructions for sanitizing, then you're still going to follow that four-step process. Wash it with soap and water, rinse it with clear water, soak it or spray it with a disinfectant solution for 2 minutes, and allow it to air dry. Okay? So when you're going out there and you're looking for affordable chemicals to use to promote wellness and maintain a healthy environment, you're going to pay close attention to the manufacturer's instructions. So for example, the picture that I have on the screen right now, many of y'all may recognize this. This is from those Clorox wipes that are very popular out there. And you're going to notice right here, it's circled in red, there are specific instructions for sanitizing. So, according to child care licensing, you can now use this type of product. And this isn't the only one. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can use. Personally, me and my schools, we use chemicals purchased from the Share Corporation. Greg, the chemical guy, some of y'all may know him. He's also one of my sponsors, so if you want information about those chemicals, you can go to my website and go to sponsors, and you've got all of his contact information. So he's got the new quat and the DSD that again meets all of the criteria. We follow those manufacturers' instructions. It's super nice. But I also want to point out not only this big change with what we can use for sanitizing, but I'm going to refer you back again to the minimum standards on page 110, 746-3407. What steps must I take to ensure a healthy environment? You've got a nice list of 13 items right there that you can read through, but I'm going to talk about number 11, where it talks about sanitizing tabletops, furniture, and other similar equipment so that you have a healthy environment. I challenge y'all to kind of do a little scavenger hunt in your building, starting with the classroom and then expanding outside of the classroom, hallways, common areas, offices, playground equipment. Make a list of every single thing that children can come into contact with, that children can get bodily fluid on, all right? And then first, you might want to start with making a list of bodily fluid. Of course, not vomit, diarrhea, poop, urine, blood, tears, sweat, breast milk. All of this is a bodily fluid. Anything that could get a bodily fluid on it needs to be sanitized throughout the day, okay? And that's why I say kind of do a scavenger hunt and make a list of everything. Backs of the chairs, when kids grab the chairs and they pull it out so they can sit down, doorknobs, sink handles, like I said earlier, playground equipment. Those of you that are transporting children, seat belts, the back of the seats, anything that they can get their mouth on needs to be sanitized throughout the day. So that right there, when we talk about promoting wellness, is one of the biggest things that we can do, all right, is thoroughly keep our center clean, all right? So that's what I've got to say about sanitizing right there. I could actually spend an entire hour just talking about that one subject, but we've got other things that we want to talk about as well, okay? Moving on is we then get to health checks. And this is something else that it is in minimum standards that that you do health checks, and you need to make sure your parents know that you do health checks. I don't think we do a good enough job at this. Not only do we not do a good enough job at this, but we don't enforce it, all right? So it's really important that everybody is trained to make sure that children are entering the program healthy, okay? And if a child is not healthy, they should not be admitted into care. So a health check is just a casual, overview of the child that when the parents bring them in the morning to drop them off, the caregiver, the teacher, the director, whoever's in there, will just kind of casually scan the child, and they're going to check, are there any breathing difficulties, severe coughing, discharge from the nose, changes in skin color, bruises, cuts, rashes. Give the kids a nice little hug, good morning. The way we do things in our program is good morning, Johnny. How would you like to be welcomed today? Would you like a high five? Would you like a hug? Would you like a hip bump? But all of the ways that we option a welcome, we'll be able to feel his cheeks or his forehead or his neck. Is there a slight fever? And if you do kind of notice something right there, ask the parent about it right then and there. All right? Don't wait until later on, but ask the parent about it. And a lot of times the parents will tattle on themselves, oh, well, he wasn't feeling good last night, but he seems to be okay now. Or he was running a fever last night, but he doesn't have one this morning. Well, right then and there, you've got to execute your illness exclusion plan. That, a child must be fever-free, symptom-free for 24 hours before they can return to care. Well, if a parent just told you he had a fever last night, that means he can't be in care today, all right? It's not from the time we notice the temperature, it's from the time he actually had the temperature. And of course, sometimes the children will say, well, my mommy gave me medicine this morning. That happens quite often too. You need to immediately address that. But the health checks, definitely something that we need to be doing. Now, this needs to be in your parent handbook that you do these. That's one of the licensing criteria. But a great way, again, to maintain that the children are coming in healthy. All right, let's talk about immunizations for just a moment. I almost did not include this into the webinar, but it is something that needs to be talked about. There is a lot of debate over whether or not immunizations do or do not promote wellness. At this point, we're going to just go with the textbook and say it does promote wellness. And so making sure that your children are entering your program and they are up to date on their immunizations is very important, not only for that child, but the other children that they will be interacting with. Now, keep in mind that currently in the United States of America, you cannot discriminate against a family who has chosen not to receive immunizations. That is a federally protected class, and it falls under CREED. So you cannot have a policy that says something like, we do not admit children who have not received all immunizations. That person can actually sue you and win if that is the case, all right? Now I say currently in the United States, that is that's the law. This is being challenged in several states right now. So we'll just have to kind of keep our eye on it and see where it goes. But the hardest part for us when it comes to promoting the wellness is making sure the children stay up to date on their immunizations. So have a good system in place in your program for tracking that. All right, let's talk about the big one right here, and hand washing. All right, the CDC has clearly stated that the best way to promote wellness, not only in your early education program, but at home and on any job, is by properly washing hands and washing your hands when you're supposed to. Almost all of our common illnesses can be prevented by hand washing. So it's important that you get the children into the routine of washing their hands. Now, child care licensing will list out 13 different times that employees must wash their hands, and there are 7 different times when children must wash their hands. And again, y'all can review that right there in your minimum standards. Most of it is common sense, but I just kind of wanted to share some techniques that you can use in the classroom to promote wellness and to get children to wash their hands. First off, the first technique to get the children into the habit of washing hands is for the adult role model, the teacher in the classroom, to wash their hands. Remember, the children look up to you. You are their role model. What you value, they will value. So when you go and you wash your hands, you know, after the diaper change, after coming in from outside, you know, before serving food, after you go to the restroom yourself, you know, all of these different times that you wash your hands, make a big deal about it and announce it to the children. I'm going to wash my hands now. And even as you're washing your hands, you're going to describe what you're doing. I'm running my hands under the water. Now I'm putting soap on my hands, and sing the song, you know, Happy Birthday or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, whatever song that will last 20 to 30 seconds so that you get that soap in there. Rinse it, dry it, but you're going to publicly display this and announce it to the children over and over and over and over again every single time you do it in the classroom. And guess what? It will become routine, and the children will start mimicking you. And so when they go to the sink, they will start describing their actions and doing the proper steps, just like you're doing. You know, it's very, very difficult to get the children into the routine of washing hands and to remember to wash hands because they're so busy and they've got so many things going on. But you role modeling this and, you know, them mimicking you is one of the best techniques. I just cannot stress that one enough. Of course, the other thing, the second best technique in promoting the wellness of hand washing is kind of like what you see on the screen right now, and that's a pictorial hand washing chart. So you've got the steps of, you know, how do you wash your hands and what do you do with real life pictures of the children doing it. You know, this is a 6-step process that you see on the slide. I've seen it just depends on how detailed you want to make it. But use photographs, use pictures of the children currently in your classroom. So every single year you're going to have to remake your hand washing charts because you want to use the children that are currently in the classroom because they're going to recognize the children or they're going to recognize themselves. It's going to draw the attention, it's going to draw the focus, and they're going to be more willing to follow it. But the pictorial charts work magically. Now remember from previous trainings that I've done with some of you, those of you that have attended previous trainings, the younger the child, the bigger the picture. All right, so in your toddler classroom where we really start getting the children into the routine of hand washing, you're going to have, you know, 5 by 7, at least 5 by 7 pictures of each of the steps of hand washing. So it's going to take a pretty large amount of space over by your sink, okay? Now, the older the child gets, the smaller the pictures can get, but we want them to be able to see it, okay? Make sure that it's at their eye level. I always encourage laminating these items, so if the child does splash it or, you know, water goes flying, it's not going to ruin your pictures and you're going to have to constantly remake them. But the mistakes that I see people make with hand washing charts is, number one, they're way up high and the kids can't see them. Number two, they're really tiny pictures. And for a young child, depending on where they're at developmentally, they're not going to be able to see and focus on that picture. So make sure it's nice and big right there. And I love it too because especially when you do the role modeling and they start mimicking you and they start describing using their words, I'm turning on the water, I'm rinsing my hands, I'm getting my hands wet, I'm putting on soap, I'm lathering the soap, I'm rinsing my hands, I'm drying my hands. They start doing it at home too. And the parents are just like blown away about, you know, what the kids are doing. And the other thing, and I've seen this many times before too, is that the children get so into this routine that they will correct the parent. And when the parent is at home, Mommy, you need to go wash your hands, or Mommy, you didn't wash your hands correctly. I love that right there. I think that's fantastic. So that right there just shows that you're doing your job. But you know, the sanitizing and the hand washing are the two biggest ways to promote wellness in your classroom. So it's got to be a priority for you. Now, there's more stuff, absolutely, that we want to talk about, but those are the two biggies. All right. The third biggie is, of course, diaper changing and toileting. All right. For your diaper changing, you're not required to wear gloves whenever you are changing a child's diaper. What the standards say is that if there is a hazardous material or hazardous waste, basically if there's a potential for blood in the bodily fluid, then you must wear gloves at that point. My whole take on this is that there could be blood in any bodily fluid. There could be blood and bodily fluid that you don't even see. All right. So I always like to encourage that you always wear gloves when changing a diaper, regardless. My policy in my schools is that every caregiver wears gloves whenever they change diaper or handle any type of bodily fluid. That is, for their protection, for the child's protection, and of course, it just promotes the healthy environment right there. Now, even if you do wear gloves, and they don't have to be the tight latex gloves, the food handler gloves that you can get from Sam's or other retailers like that, that is perfectly fine, because remember, when we talk about promoting wellness and maintaining a healthy environment, the hand washing is number one. All right, that's the number one way to prevent the spread of germs is your hand washing. The gloves are just an extra layer of protection. All right, so that's why sometimes the plastic food handlers will work just fine because it's that added layer of protection. All right. You still got to wash your hands after you remove them, so that's one of the common mistakes that people make right there. And of course, you need to get a new set of gloves after every child, okay? You don't want to sit there and use the same pair of gloves over and over again. That's just kind of nasty right there. Make sure that you're washing the children's hands after you change a diaper. Number one, it's going to get them into the routine of hand washing right there in the infant toddler room. You're starting that routine with hand washing. The other thing is that for an infant, washing their hands is a sensory activity. And so it's stimulating the senses. It's also physical touch and massage on the skin, which releases endorphins in the brain that build connections. So there's a lot of benefits to hand washing infant hands in addition to just maintaining a healthy environment. There's a lot of good stuff going on right there. Now, the way we do it in my world is that if the infant is not old enough to hold up to the sink, and it's more of a risk to hold that infant up to the sink than it is to wash their hands, then you can just use squirt bottles. And I'll have one squirt bottle with soapy water that you'll just squirt on the little infant hands, rub them together, again, 20 to 30 seconds, and then squirt it with some rinse water. So another water bottle with rinse water, rinse it off, grab some paper towels, dry them off, dispose of the paper towels. Once the infant or young toddler is old enough to be able to hold them up to the sink, then of course we want to get them into that routine of washing hands at the sink. All right. Like I said, you must discard the gloves after each use. If you do have any open wounds or sores, that would prevent you from washing your hands properly, then obviously you do not need to be given this duty of diaper change. We want to keep you healthy and keep the children healthy as well. And then make sure that you sanitize that diaper changing surface after each use, okay? Now, again, if you're following that 4-step process that we mentioned earlier, washing with soap and water, rinse with clear water, soak or spray it with a disinfectant solution for at least 2 minutes and allow it to air dry. If you're having to do this after every single diaper change, it's going to take you all day to change diapers. So that's where this new rule that came into play in April is really, really helpful, because now that we're following manufacturer's instructions, depending on what chemical you're using, your contact time could be now 60 seconds instead of 2 minutes. That's going to cut down quite a bit of that time. Or As you see here on the screen, you can use a non-absorbent paper liner on your diaper changing tables, which is what I recommend that you do, kind of like exam paper that you see at the doctor's office, that you just pull the paper out, put the child on it, change the diaper. After you change the diaper, you also throw that paper away, roll out some more, and it keeps it nice and fresh. That works out really well. Okay. Just a side note item, just a little off topic right here. One thing that we do is we have this chemical, and again, I get it from Greg, the chemical guy in Share Corporation. It's a chemical called Dynasty, and it basically cuts urine smell and kind of destroys urine smell. And its intent is to spray like on bathroom floors and toilets, so that when children go to the restroom and they miss the toilet and get it all over the floor, you know, even after you clean that, you still smell the urine, and that's because urine turns into a salt, and it goes into all of those little cracks and everything into the floor. That's why it's so hard to get rid of that urine smell. This Dynasty chemical will kill that urine smell. It's really, really remarkable. We just do a fine mist in all of our bathrooms every morning before we open, and again, it makes the building smell really nice and fresh and clean, and you don't have that urine smell. Well, one other thing that I use that for is I have a squirt bottle with some of the Dynasty in it. Anytime we change a child's diaper, whether it's poopy or wet, we just do one small squirt of that Dynasty inside of the diaper and then wrap the diaper up and throw it away in the pail. This keeps your classroom and it keeps your building from having that dirty diaper smell. And y'all know sometimes you walk into the school and it's like, woof, dirty diaper like hits you in the face, you know. It's such a strong smell. Just spraying one little spray of that chemical, it cuts the smell. It's been fantastic that we've been doing that. All right. And then, of course, any container that you use to throw away your dirty diapers, it needs to have a lid on it. It needs to be sanitary and must be inaccessible to children. All right. Now, if you have a diaper that does potentially have blood in it, then that needs to be placed in an individual sealed bag. You can't just throw that one in the trash can or in the diaper pail. If there's potential blood, that needs to be in an individual sealed bag and disposed of. That is part of the handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste criteria that came out in September of 2016. You know, I always like to recommend that if you do have a situation where a child does have diarrhea or vomits and you have to clean that up, I like to take those straight to the dumpster, all right? Those dirty diapers don't go into the pail, they go straight to the dumpster. Just again, that smell and that perception of a healthy environment is pretty important too. All right, so those, again, and then let's talk about toileting right here too, and maintaining a healthy environment and promoting wellness. When children do go into the restroom, making sure that the restroom, that it is a clean restroom and that it is clean throughout the day. You know, a lot of times children will go into the restroom, toddlers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. They do their business. They kind of make a mess sometimes, whether it's on the inside of the toilet bowl or on the toilet seat, or wherever there may be some leftovers, let's just call it that. And if you don't clean that right away, then when another child comes in, they could be sitting on that. their curiosity could get the best of them, and they could touch that. Anything that looks different or smells different, they're going to explore. So that's a possible way that they could be getting sick. As you're sending children in and out of the restroom, just take a quick look. Is everything still clean? If you see any marks inside of the toilet or any potential exposure, just clean that up really quick before another child uses that toilet, just so the opportunity for them to be curious and touch or sit or get that waste on them, it's not there. All right. But, I've seen it where, kids have, gone to the restroom and just really used the restroom and left a lot of evidence in there. And then the teacher's like, oh, the cleaning crew will clean it up at the end of the night. Well, that's kind of disgusting, because waiting for the cleaning crew to clean that, you have other children that's going to be using that bathroom all day long, and there is a potential risk of exposure every single time someone goes near that toilet. So make sure that your bathrooms stay cleaned throughout the day. All right. Huge tip for promoting wellness right there. All right. When you do have a child that gets ill in your program, obviously licensing is going to require that child be excluded from care, all right? And they must be excluded from care until the illness is gone or they're no longer contagious, all right? And you need to try to send that child home as soon as possible. And you may want to consider putting a time frame on that, that when you do send a child home, or you call a parent and say, hey, Johnny just threw up, Johnny has a fever, whatever it may be, there needs to be a time frame that is established on how long the parent has to get there. You want to put that in your parent handbook and maybe even remind them on the phone. Now, of course, I'm just going to throw this out there too. Anytime you send a child home sick, that is a reflection of how healthy your environment is from the parent's point of view, all right? Because the parent is paying you to care and to educate their child. They're expecting that while the child is in your care, they will remain well, all right? So when we send a child home sick, that lowers the expectation. So I always like to remind teachers of that anytime you do send a child home sick, that is an opportunity for you to do more when it comes to promoting wellness and maintaining a healthy environment. Are we washing hands the way we're supposed to? Are we sanitizing everything that we're supposed to be sanitizing? How did this illness get in here? Or are we following our illness exclusion plan? Are we allowing sick children to come in? Most of the time, that's it right there. Whenever a child does get sick, obviously you need to clean that up, get it clean so that other children don't become sick, care for the children apart from the other children until the parent picks them up. And then again, like I said, they must remain out of care, fever-free, symptom-free, for 24 hours without medication. And I would make sure that that is included in your parent handbook as well, without medication. And I also just want to remind, when we talk about responding to illness, that illness is more than just a fever, all right? We get way too caught up on the fever part. Is it 100, is it 100.1, or 101, 102, whatever? I'm going to quote the minimum standards where it says a child must be able to comfortably participate in program activities, including outdoor play. And so the key word right there is the child must be able to comfortably participate in program activities. The child could have 101 fever, but be perfectly fine otherwise, all right? He's comfortable. He's not contagious. That could happen. Not a lot, but it could. All right. Or it could be that he's not running a fever at all, but there's other signs and symptoms that are preventing him from being comfortably in the program. So, I encourage y'all to get off of this fever, kick and focus more on, is the child comfortable and are they able to participate in program activities? That's what's important right there. Now, one of the new minimum standards that we do have as of April of 2017, it does now specifically mention if a parent brings you a note from a healthcare professional after you have excluded a child with an illness, the note must specifically say that the child is no longer ill or the child is no longer contagious. So if you have a parent that brings in a doctor's note that just says, Johnny was seen in my office and can return to care, that note is not valid. Okay? Any note that a parent brings you must specifically say the child is no longer ill or the child is no longer contagious. All right? That's a good new rule. I like that new rule. We just got to educate our pediatricians on it now. Okay? And then I already mentioned adult illnesses. Talking about promoting wellness in the program. First thing I want to mention is that your illness exclusion policy should be followed for teachers just like it is for children. All right. So if a teacher is ill, they should not be in the program, just like when a child is ill. Now, the difference there is that as an adult, we should be able to keep ourselves healthier than children. We should be able to cure ourselves quicker than children. We've got a little bit more control there than the child. But we don't want our teachers coming in sick and then getting all of the children sick. All right? But you also have a job to do. And you also are there to care and to educate young children. You're also there to be counted in child staff ratio and support the business needs of the center. So if you have a teacher that continues to get sick and continues to get sick, then you've got to have the tough conversation that this may not be the right job for you. All right? If working here continues to get you sick, then not only am I responsible for the health of the children, but I'm also responsible for your health, and you working here may not be healthy for you, all right? And then also keep in mind parents walking in, like I said, if they walk in sick, they've got the potential risk of spreading illnesses. So if you see a parent coming in to pick up their child and they're ill, stop them at the front desk, all right? Don't let them go past the front desk. Go get the kids for them. Bring the child out to them. If you allow that adult person that's ill to walk your hallways, to enter your classrooms, then they're just spreading those germs as they walk along. So, kind of keep an eye on your parents too, and put it in your parent handbook that if they are contagious or if they're ill, let you know at the front desk so that you can go and deliver the child, okay? They're normally the ones bringing in all the illnesses anyways. All right, and then last thing I've got right here, just again, a really quick overview of some of the things we've talked about and then a couple of other things that we didn't talk about yet. Again, I just want to reinforce the hand washing. Your role modeling of hand washing is so imperative. The pictorial hand washing charts are amazing, but put that strong focus on hand washing. And again, send this home to parents too. The 13 different times that we are required to wash our hands, turn that into a parent article. Turn that into a memo to parents. Y'all need to be following these same practices at home to help promote a well program here. Using gloves and tissues, again, anytime you come into contact with a bodily fluid, Try to put those gloves on to help protect you from universal precautions. Tissues, if you're using a Kleenex or a tissue, that tissue may not maintain the bodily fluid. You could still get it on your hands. The gloves are just good practices right there. Follow your health and safety guidelines for diaper and toileting. Like I said, maintain that clean and healthy environment throughout the day. And then toothbrushing, brushing teeth. That's something we didn't talk about yet. But promote wellness in your program. Promoting wellness in your program is not just keeping illnesses out, but it's also just overall health as well. So, dental hygiene, brushing your teeth, flossing your teeth, great conversations to have in the classroom. You're not required to brush children's teeth in the classroom by licensing, but I know some programs do choose to practice this. If you choose to do that, absolutely you can do it. You just got to make sure that the children's toothbrushes do not come into contact with each other, so you can't cross-contaminate between toothbrushes. But that's up to you if you want to promote that. We can definitely do a lot of activities in the classroom to promote good dental hygiene, in addition to brushing teeth. Napping actually falls into the category of promoting wellness. And I think that this is important to have conversations with not only your children, but your families too. The importance of getting enough sleep, getting proper sleep, and making sure your body has that moment to shut down and rejuvenate, which for young children is absolutely necessary. If you have a parent that comes in and says, I don't want my child to take a nap today, or I don't want my child to take a nap, period, you need to have that tough conversation that, number one, it's required by licensing that we have a nap or rest period. But for the child's development, they have to have that downtime so that their body can rejuvenate and be ready for the afternoon. And I could do a whole hour-long webinar just on napping and how it affects the brain and how it affects cognitive learning and physical development. Making sure that when children are not only kids but adults too, when you wake up from either sleeping or napping, that you're not woken automatically during a REM cycle. There's some psychological issues that take place whenever you wake up at the wrong time. And so there's all kinds of stuff right there that you could talk about. There's actually an app that you can download on your smartphone on REM cycles, sleeping cycles, that if you go to sleep at this point in time and you're this age and wait, it'll tell you when you should and should not be woken up for optimal health. It's really interesting. But yes, napping is important. Nutritious meals, promoting that wellness in your program. Talk about eating healthy. Don't just talk about it, do it, all right? Take a look at your menu that you're serving your children. Are you serving healthy foods? If you've got a lot of processed foods, if you've got a lot of canned foods, I would really encourage you to take a look and find some way of cutting that out. I did this about 6 years ago now. We eliminated all canned food and eliminated a lot of processed foods off of our menus and went to fresh fruit and fresh vegetables for our children. Now, there's a little bit more manpower that goes into having to clean it and cut it and all of that kind of stuff. But it's actually cheaper than the canned and processed foods, and it's healthier for the children. You're just going to have to work a little bit harder on those meals. But, talking to the kids about what's healthy, what's not healthy, not only at school but at home also. I love this story. This just recently happened. We had a dad that was coming in to drop off his child, and he told us that he was a little irritated yesterday afternoon at first, but then he realized it was pretty funny. He said at the time he was pretty hot, but on the way home from school, he pulled through McDonald's to get dinner for the family. And the 3.5, 4-year-old child in the back seat said, "Daddy, we should not be eating here. This is not a healthy choice." And so, I thought that was pretty awesome. Obviously, the teacher had been talking about nutritious meals, and fast food may not be the best option for you. And this child corrected their father in the drive-thru. So I thought that was pretty funny. We laugh about it now. And all of this stuff that we've talked about today, share it with your parents. Don't assume that they know how to promote wellness at home, what they should be doing at home to maintain a healthy environment. Don't judge them if they don't know what they're doing. A lot of times, our parents are doing the best they can. We got to give them credit right there. But partner with your parents and help educate them on how to keep their child healthy and how to help keep the school healthy. Share a lot of information with them, because like I said, a lot of times they're just doing the best they can, and they're in a hurry, they're rushed, they've got a lot on their plate. Following health practices may be down on their priority list. We need to try to get it back up on their priority list. All right. Questions or comments about anything that we discussed or anything that we did not discuss in today's webinar? If y'all have any questions or comments, you can type that into the chat screen, or challenges that you may be having. Y'all can throw that out there. If not, then we'll go ahead and close out our webinar for today. I hope that you learned something in our webinar about promoting wellness, maybe some new practices that you can put in place in your classroom. I want our children to be healthy. I want you to be healthy. And so, anything we can do to help that out, it's going to be better. All right. As always, if you come up with a question later on, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer your questions. You can give me a call. Email is always best, but you can call me. That's what we're here for. Once again, your certificates will be emailed to you to the email address that you used at registration time. And I thank you all once again for joining our webinar today. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.